Hi everyone, if you'd like to take your seats, we'll be starting soon. I'd just like to let you know while you're waiting that we are live today, broadcasting live to YouTube, so it's begun, so look pretty. All right guys, we're about to begin. Ready to go? Okay, hi everyone. Is everyone taking their seats? Hi. A few more people coming in. I just wanted to remind everybody that we're live broadcasting to YouTube today. So there's people that are watching from all over, and this will be available forever on our YouTube channel. If you'd like to go back and listen again, check out how good you look, whatever you want to do, it's there forever. So I just, before we begin, wanted to say thank you so much for coming. This is a massive issue for the region, so important, and we're really happy that there's so many people that are concerned. We kicked off yesterday up in Coppenhurst, and we had about 75 people in that little hall, and it was just awesome. The community spirit and the unity, the learning, the safe space to talk about things that could be hard to talk about if there were CEOs in front of you from mining companies and so on. So we've asked, obviously, that the mining companies don't attend these events. We've reached out to those CEOs and they've respected that, so that's great. We just want you to feel supported and educated and able to speak openly at these events. So I just wanted to say a big thank you as well to the Servicemen's Club, the Grafton District Servicemen's Club. They've allowed us to have this space for free today, so we really thank them. And I'd also like to thank all of our beautiful volunteers from Valley Watch. They help us so much, and we can't do that without them. And for everybody from the Clarence Environment Centre, we are an umbrella group of the Clarence Environment Centre, so we can't do this without them. And to everyone from the CCA, the whole team, you know who you are. And to our amazing speakers, I will thank you again later, but I just wanted to kick off by saying a big thank you to everybody. This is, as I said, a big issue, and we've got so many perspectives, and our speakers that we'll talk to as we move through will cover cultural, economic, environmental, social, and obviously cultural. Okay, so we've got these great speakers that are just a broad range of perspectives on what this could possibly do to our region, and all of that revolves around water, clean water, keeping the place clean. So before we do or say anything else, I would like to hand over to Auntie Nita Taylor, Grafton Elder, and she's going to do a beautiful welcome to country and also share her thoughts on what this means for culture.
Good afternoon, everyone. As a Grafton Elder, I would like to welcome you all here today for the CCA and the EDO Regional Round Show. I would also like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the Bundjalung, Gumbaynggirr and Yaegl elders past and present. Our rivers are not just lines drawn on a map, not just channels of water moving from mountain to sea. Each river, creek, billabong holds the memory of our ancestors, that their journeys and their struggles. The water itself carries the spirit of the land, connecting us to the country and to each other. Water once ran clear and strong, filled with fish, turtles, and all manner of life. The banks were listed with reeds and trees. The birds called out at dawn, and the children learned to swim and play in the cool pools. Gatherings were always near water because the river was a place to meet and sharing our belonging. Now we see too much taken from the rivers, water drawn away for crops and towns and industry. Dams and their weirs break the natural flow, and pollution seeps through the water and lands. The fish grow fewer and the birds are quiet where there once was song. When I was growing up in Kangi, we used to go down to the river and swim and fish all the time. We couldn't walk across the river. It was impossible because it was deep, strong. And we were lucky enough if there was a little rowboat we could row across. Gradually I could see the water getting lower and lower. When I heard about to mine Kangi, I thought this would kill our beautiful river. The equipment and chemicals they would bring into the land would end up, and Man River would be lost. As I mentioned before, the river is a meeting place for our people, and it's more precious than mineral and that anything that they can mine. I would look to call on you all to whoever. I'd like to call whatever your heritage, to listen to the river, to honour the spirit, and to walk with us on the earth to healing. Together we can bring back the life and the waterways, reconnect with the old stories, and ensure that our children, grandchildren inherit rivers that are strong, healthy and free. The river is old, but is it also young? It is flowing on, and as we do too. May we always remember the teachings and carry the spirit towards everything we do. Thank you. Yep, I'll just stand. Yes.
Oh, thank you so much, Auntie Nita. Like when Auntie Lenore talks about the river, I nearly cry every time. It's really deep and passionate, and just so many amazing years linked back through culture that's so important. Auntie Nita's given us permission to use her statement to hand to the ministers when we go to Parliament. So thank you. It's really important. Before I move on into what we're going to present today, we will have a break at about 1:45 if you'd like to get up and move around and grab a drink. We're then going to cross live via Zoom to one of our speakers. So it's going to be a pretty short break, but this is quite a long presentation because it's so important and it's so in depth. We've got that many perspectives to get across. So there will be a break at 1:45. We do have an apology from one of our speakers, Jeff Jones from the Farmers Association in Grafton. Unfortunately can't make it today. He's ill. He spoke really passionately yesterday, though, and has given me permission to kind of speak on his behalf and mention some of what he talked about. So we're down one speaker, but that's okay. Our speakers for today are Professor Scott Johnston. He's an environmental hydrogeochemist from Southern Cross University, and he'll be talking about the Macleay River and what that means for us here in the Clarence. And as I mentioned, Jeff Jones, absent, sorry. Janet Kavanagh is from the Clarence Environment Centre, and she'll be talking a bit more about species and what all of this means for our endangered species mostly. Dr. Stuart Rowland is a specialist in the eastern freshwater cod, and the eastern freshwater cod is on our logo. You may know that the eastern freshwater cod only lives here, so we'll learn a bit more about that from him. And after our break, we're going to be joined by Ella Noah Bancroft, Bundjalung woman, poet, author, and just an amazing CEO of the Returning Indigenous Corporation. She's going to join us and talk more on culture. And we have Steve Ross. Stephen Ross is the only resident of the Clarence living under a mining licence. There's 3 mining licences already here in the Clarence. The rest are exploration licences or exploration licence applications, and you'll get to learn a bit more about that too. So we're going to talk to Steve about what's been going on in his land and what he's been facing with mining companies already. So we have it's only exploration is what we hear all the time. It's only exploration, but there's actual impacts already on our community, and we'll talk more with him later. And then we hear from the Environmental Defenders Office. Belinda and Jem will speak about our rights and basically what the process is when and if a mining company asks for access to your land, and what we can do as well as a united community, even if you don't live on or near an EL or an ELA, what we can do as a full community. And I will also be talking about what's going on in the region, so an overview. When we go to the smaller regions, we're looking at exploration licenses in those towns, but for this one, because Grafton is downriver, it's just as important though to know about it. It impacts our water and our drinking water. So we're going to do a little bit of an overview of what's going on, and then at the end I'll share with you what you can do to help, because there's a lot that we can all do right now, and we need to do it now rather than later. So I'd just like to walk through with you what is actually going on across the region. A little bit about what the CCA is, because I'm not sure everybody is aware of what the Clarence Catchment Alliance is. And there's a couple of misconceptions that we really want to talk about today and kind of just get that out in the open as well, and show you what's going on, but also show you what we're doing, and where we're at with this campaign. So we've been going with this campaign for nearly 8 years, and we're an amalgamation of a lot of different groups. There are lots of little groups, concerned about this issue. And in 2018, the Clarence Catchment Alliance was formed to bring those groups together, hence the word alliance. And look, there's communities all over the region, as you know, impacted. So we joined together to form the Clarence Catchment Alliance. And we're not experts. We're just locals. We're just residents, and we really just collaborate and learn from whoever would like to assist, and provide us with great evidence or tips and advice. So we're from different backgrounds. We all have varying skills, and there's no vested interest in this other than the protection of our rivers and our water and our beautiful region. Our campaign is not politically driven. We are not aligned with any political party at all. However, we do talk very openly with government, because government writes policy and legislation, and the legislation impacts us. And therefore, we have to engage with MPs and ministers to talk about that, because we want change. And, I always say you can hold up a sign and put a sticker on your car all you like, but you really have to get in and talk to the people that can change the policy and protect this region, to also make a difference. And there's lots of different ways for campaigning, and we certainly use lots of different methods, but we also do talk to MPs. So there's 44 exploration licences across the Clarence at the moment. And exploration is happening from the Dorrigo Plateau down in the south, up through the back of Kangi and Carnum, Kumbadja, and through Ewingar to Tabulum, Drake area. So that's the Clarence Catchment there, the lightened area. And you can see the blue, the darker blue, they're exploration licences right across our region. The Nimboida, the Clarence, and the Man flow right between those explorations. So they are on the plateaus beside those rivers. These are the ELs and ELAs. ELAs are exploration applications, and they are being progressed. We're watching them. They're being progressed and approved from exploration license application to exploration license within only a few months, faster than ever. They're being fast-tracked. That's the terminology used by the government, fast-tracking. And the legislation that is fast-tracking it is the Critical Mineral Strategy, the New South Wales Critical Mineral Strategy. And it's a glossy brochure. It looks like a tour guide promo brochure or a real estate brochure. But yeah, it's glossy, and they're promoting exploration right across New South Wales, not just in our region. We're in collaboration and communication with lots of different community groups across New South Wales, and sharing information and being guided and given tips by them as well, that are way more advanced than us in terms of the fight. It's a fight none of us want to have. We're just locals, and we're just normal people, everyday people, and we work this every day, lots of us, and we really hope that you jump on board and help or assist or start your own little adventure on this. So these are the ELs across the Dorrigo region. This is our drinking water catchment. So the drinking water comes from the Dorrigo Plateau for coughs and for the Clarence. And in March, there was antimony detected in our drinking water, in our Shannon Creek Dam. That's the water source for us. And we're following that up very, very closely. And we can't say what put that antimony in that water, but there does just so happen to be historical antimony exploration drill holes above. So I can't say that that's what it's from, but it's pretty close to it. So these are the ELs and across Carnum, and also they're the ELs and ELAs across Ewingar. So that region we'll talk more about when we talk to Steve. But yeah, there's lots. There's lots. And these aren't new. They've been there for a while. The ELAs are new. The ELs have been there for quite some time, but they swap companies. So they ramp up and they get all excited about digging and exploring and, oh, it's so much, it's so great. And, there's so much underneath this ground and we're going to make it rich and it's going to be amazing and these anomalies are just out of this world. And then they kind of disappear for a while, but they've ramped back up. They've ramped back up in Drake and they've ramped back up on the Dorrigo Plateau. The one up in Carnham, a copper exploration, was pretty active, but it's been kind of dormant, laying low a little bit for the last couple of years. But they were funded by the state government and federal government. So our vision, look, we envision the Clarence Catchment region where our right to clean water and healthy environments is respected and protected. We don't think we should have to fight for that, like drinking water. Do you really want an antimony mine in your drinking water catchment? It just seems like it's lunacy to us. We're not activists. I just want to mention that too. Like we're not, hardcore activists. We're just cruisy people that love the river, love fishing, love the beach, love the mountains, and just need clean water. So we come from a place of care and protection, is what we like to say. Care and protection, and we always say us and we, not I and me. There's no real, we always talk about the group and the community. So we really just want a future where mineral exploration and mineral mining is banned from drinking water catchments and from ecologically and culturally significant areas. And then because this is a flood zone here and a high rainfall region, we can't risk water contamination. That heightens the risk of water contamination. High rainfall and flood, tailings dams, landslips. We know on the Dorrigo Plateau the landslips that occur. It's steep terrain next to these rivers, and high rainfall, everything ends up back in that river. And you know how quick everything comes from upriver to the sea? You can see it at Yamba. See a big brown mark in the ocean when it comes down. So that's how quick it comes down. And so whatever happens upstream ends up downstream, and that's why we're so glad that everybody from downstream here today in Grafton can join us. Our rivers are the backbone of this whole place. We're water people. It's the backbone of the land and it's the lifeblood of the people. And we're not anti-mining, as I said. We're not anti-mining. We couldn't even be doing what we're doing today without mining. We're not anti-mining at all. We want to really make that clear. We're just anti-mining in areas that aren't suited for mining, like highly significant cultural areas, highly significant ecological areas, drinking water catchments, and a flood zone. I mean, the more water you have, the more risk you have of contamination of water. And our whole economy also relies on water. All of our industries are water industries. Our vision is so all-encompassing, and we thank Danielle for these just amazing images that she provided us. Beautiful smoking ceremonies and culture. It's amazing, and rivers are significant and so central to all the Indigenous community here. So we see our local region where river dreaming lives on through the Bundjalung, Gumbaynggirr and Yagle people for all of us to connect to. All of us. Where over 400 endangered species continue to thrive, some found nowhere else on Earth. We've got 400 just here in the Clarence LGA. That's not even the Clarence catchment. It's over 400 just in this LGA. And where our way of life, our livelihoods and our local economies are sustained by the water and rivers that run through us all. We're united in our purpose to protect our water, save our rivers and care for our catchment. We also care for country. And our rivers hold us up. We'll never let them down. It's something that we just like to say. And we hope that you feel the same way too. Now talking to the amazing duos, Uncle Herb and allows exploration in flood. Because so we think this whole process is backwards. And we are really asking them to rethink this. You know, why give out these blanket exploration licenses if you say, okay, well, look, it's only exploration, and then when they do the environmental and social impact study, they might not even get up. Well, why let them try? Why waste everyone's time? I mean, I'd love to be in Bali or, you know, Sri Lanka, anywhere. You know, communities shouldn't have to fight for their water. We love doing this, don't get me wrong. But, you know, we shouldn't have to fight. And so we're saying it's backwards. And we're saying, like, you know, it's time for change. And we don't enter into the, you know, saying where it's better to mine. We don't get into that. We're not experts. And we're not the NIMBY approach either, not in my backyard. We're not doing that either. We're not just saying, I'll just go and take it somewhere else. We're speaking on behalf of all communities that have these issues, not even just across New South Wales, but in Australia, that have these issues in their drinking water catchments and in flood zones and in high cultural significant areas. You know, this isn't just about us. We want to set a precedent for other communities. So we want the government to identify and exclude high-risk areas such as flood zones, drinking water catchments, as I said, and we want them to respect that exploration sites here are on Bunjalung, Gumbaynggirr country and the rivers that flow into Yagal, and that this land and waterways hold deep cultural significance. Now, the legislation that they use is called the Critical Minerals Strategy. The word critical, anyway, we believe that connection to country is way more critical than minerals. And so that's, you know, one of the strong arguments in our evidence. We want them to recognise that the endangered eastern freshwater cod spawn in the rivers that mining exploration is right beside. They shut down the river for 3 months of the year. And then the same department, the planning department, actually allow exploration, same spot. So trying to save an endangered species, yet, okay, we might actually mine in the same spot. It's a little crazy to us. We said something, it sounds a bit fishy. Yeah, boom tish. So yeah, look, there's already been violations of the protection zone, the fish protection zone, and yet they were allowed to, you know, recommence. We want them to recognise that the Clarence LGA, as I said before, has over 400 endangered species and the ecosystems that actually support them. We have so many biodiverse landscapes that need protection. We want them to acknowledge that the Clarence Valley is identified as the New South Wales, in their own policy, in the Disaster Mitigation Plan, as one of the state's highest flood risk LGAs. And we're the only LGA that has been ticked in all 3 of the risk categories. So we are recognised as high risk, highest in New South Wales, on cultural, social and environmental, cultural, economic and environmental risk. And we're the only LGA in New South Wales that ticks all 3. But sure, let's put in some mines. Let it all run down into the rivers through the floods. We want them really to acknowledge their own legislation, and we point out exactly where they've got it. You said this, that means this. So we want them also to acknowledge the cost of the environmental damage and the cleanup. The rehabilitations are not paid for by the companies. They're often left to the local councils. Our mayor's here today. I'm sure you don't want to have to pay for all of this damage control afterwards. And also the taxpayers. Taxpayers are left to clean up the bill because the companies go bust, they walk away and say, sorry, dissolved, deal with it. And that's actually happening here already. We have a leaching, unrehabilitated site here in the Clarence Catchment. We want them to balance the critical minerals and high-tech metals strategy by recognising that protecting the environment, water, health and culture and the local sustainable industries as more critical than mineral extraction. The State Significant Development Bill, they passed that last year. That's just opened it up to allow all of this to be fast-tracked and pushed through, really without proper consultation. We want them to acknowledge that our community is rightly sceptical of the jobs promise. They promise jobs, 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 jobs. Oh yeah, but it'll bring all this great stuff to the region, bring, you know, all this wealth to the region. We highly doubt that if you're already not in mining, if you're not a FIFO worker, fly in, fly out, I doubt they're going to come to your local club and offer you a high-paying mineral mining job. You'll probably drive a truck, make sambos, things like that. So it's not exactly as glossy as they sell it. And just think about if the water was contaminated, how many industries down river, cane, cattle, prawning, fishing would be decimated. So all those jobs would be gone. So is the trade-off really that worth it? Mining companies are in town for about 10 years, maybe. When we spoke to, I've nearly said the name. When we spoke to a mining company a couple of years ago, they told us that they could provide probably 50 jobs to locals over 10 years. Didn't seem much. Is that really worth the risk? We don't think so. We want them to prioritise the 6,500 stable jobs in agriculture, tourism and seafood industries worth $1.157 billion per annum to the Clarence economy. We produce so much income for the New South Wales economy, and not just New South Wales, not just state, but Australia as well. Jeff Jones spoke yesterday. He's a local producer. He's a beef producer. And he said that when the droughts hit out west, we're the feeder for those farmers. He restocks all of their livestock. We restock the livestock for the west from here. So we are a food bowl, we're a big producing region, and we need to protect it. And the only thing that keeps all of that alive, clean water. Okay, I know this is a bit legislative, but we really do want you to understand why we're going to Parliament and what we are going to present. It's really important that the whole community gets across it. So we want them also to uphold its own North Coast regional water strategy, which recognises that water is critical to the region's environment, communities and economy, and to ensuring mining contamination is not added to those existing challenges. We've got challenges here, according to the New South Wales government. They need to really pay attention to it. And we want to really take and drive home, and you can get involved in this later. We've got some statements that you can make up the back. If you want to submit a community statement, care statement. Our community's granted no social licence, and the CCA doesn't just hold up signs and put stickers on the cars and say we don't want mining. We collect evidence, and we've been collecting hard evidence for 6 years. We have 10,000 signatures that's been debated in the lower house in Parliament a couple of years ago, and we also did a study with Southern Cross University in 2023, and we found that 72% are against mineral mining here in the Clarence. And there was another 10% that didn't quite know because they didn't know enough about it, so I'd say the percentage would be higher. So we want to show them that we've got this evidence, we've got all this evidence with us, and there's absolute opposition from all over this region to mineral mining. And you can have a look at that study online. We really want them to follow their own code of practice, and we have areas of this region where communities aren't even contacted by these mining companies. There's no consultation, and part of the New South Wales, the process is that you need to communicate and consult with community, and it's just not happening. It is a little bit in some areas, it's not happening at all in others, and it's being said that there is consultation, but there's not in other regions as well. So we're going to really bring that home when we meet. There's already psychological and social and financial toll on our residents here, and Steve's one of them. We'll get to him. But yeah, we just want them to know it's not just mining that impacts communities, it's the exploration as well. There's already evidence from across New South Wales that mining poisons water, poisons air, and is really impacting the health of communities. And those communities have the evidence. And so they really need to pay attention. There was an upper house inquiry into it last year, and we would like them to have a better look at that and use that as a case study for our region. We've got 7 councils in support. We lobbied the councils in 2021, so all those local councils are in support of our calls. We've got, we're working on Tenterfield. We don't know how we'll go there, but anyway. Okay, so also, I've already mentioned this, we just want them to really formally recognise that the Shannon Creek Dam has already been detected with antimony in it. And yeah, stop wasting community and government's time and money. Just stop doing this blanket approval of exploration. Really, suss out where these mines can go, and if they are not going to go through to extraction phase, make exclusion zones. Which brings me to what we're asking them for. So there's a piece of legislation called the Mining SEP, and the Mining SEP, in Schedule 1, the Mining SEP can have areas, no-go zones for mining, and we're asking the government to add this region to that. So that's our number 1 goal. And we've been told that that can happen with the stroke of a pen. They don't even really have to go to a vote or anything like that. The Minister for Planning can do that and add that region. And we're gunning to meet him. Fingers crossed. We've got confirmation that we do have meetings with 3, but we're just not sure just yet which ones have accepted. So yeah, that's what we're going to ask for. We want them to add our region to the mining SEP as a no-go zone or an exclusion zone. So thank you. We do hope that you can fill in a statement for us at the back if there are any community leaders. We've got CEOs from land corporations signatures. We've got MPs and ministers. We've got the councillors' signatures. We've got so many great community leaders signed our pledge. We have a pledge. So if there's any community leaders in the audience that would like to sign that pledge, or if you are just a community member, you can write a statement at the back table with Elizabeth afterwards. So thank you. Thank you so much. This is just a little picture of a before and after. This is Carnham, the Man River. That is a gold mine near Orange. So it's just a little before and after. So please submit a statement. Thank you. And I'm going to hand over. That was a little longer than we were going to do because Jeff's not here, so Scott and I are going to take a little bit more time. So Scott, thank you so much, Professor Scott Johnston.
Thank you, Shay. Hi, everybody. Lovely to see so many people here. It's fantastic. Okay, I'm just going to adjust this a wee bit. All right, that's better. Okay, can you hear me okay? All right. So I'm going to talk with you today about contamination in the Macleay River by antimony and by arsenic due to historic mining activities. I'd like to start with some quick acknowledgements. This research occurred on Dunghutti country, and it was a citizen science university collaboration where the water samples were all collected by trained community volunteers, and they were analysed at Southern Cross University. Everything that I'm going to be talking to you about here in terms of the research has already been published in peer-reviewed journal articles and is publicly available. So I'm going to start by talking about why antimony and arsenic are important. I'll discuss their mobility and their toxicity in rivers. And then I'm going to briefly explain the historic contamination that took place in the Macleay River, what, when and how did that happen. And then I'm going to try to summarise 7 years worth of research in 5 minutes or less, basically looking at water quality and the downstream transport of antimony and arsenic. I'll compare what we measured in the river to water quality guideline values, and at the end I'll provide an estimate of how long the legacy is likely to last in the Macleay. And right at the very end I'll provide a brief peek at the Wild Cattle Creek antimony deposit in the Upper Clarence as well. So antimony and arsenic are what we call metalloids, both of them. So there's between a metal and a non-metal in terms of their chemistry. but they're both toxic to humans. Yeah? Arsenic is the nastier of the two. Yeah? It's a really potent carcinogen, yeah? So it can cause cancer. Antimony has also been identified as having human carcinogen potential, but there's less data on it and the risks are less well understood. They have quite complex geochemistry. Yeah? They behave in different ways in the environment. The two common antimony and arsenic minerals, which are often associated with mining, arsenopyrite and stibnite, when you dig these up and expose them to the air, they both oxidise, yeah? Which is like rusting, and this changes their toxicity and it changes their solubility in water. And for antimony, it becomes more soluble in water in general. Now, the Australian drinking water guidelines for both arsenic and antimony is quite low. For arsenic, it's 10 parts per billion. Yeah, it's quite low, but for antimony, it's even less, 3 parts per billion. So, how did the Macleay River become contaminated? Basically, it was historic mining in the upper catchment, just near Armidale, a place called Baker's Creek, and it started in 1878. And they were originally targeting gold, primarily, but over time, antimony became more important in the form of stibnite, and the ore body also has arsenopyrite all through it. And these were mostly underground mines, yeah, that were following veins of ore. What this meant is that prior to 1970, yeah, this mining led to the accumulation of tailings and waste rock, yeah, in Baker's Creek itself, totalling about 7 million tonnes of material. And at times they even processed ore in the creek itself. You can see that photograph on the upper right-hand side there. That's Baker's Creek and an ore processing facility. So as a result, yeah, the sediments, this is gorge country, I should say. Yeah? It's gorge country, it's very, very steep, and it's subject to intermittent high rainfall. Yeah? So as a result, the sediments, yep, in the trunk channel, the main channel of the Macleay River downstream, have been contaminated with antimony from this area, all the way down to the ocean. Yep, so about 300 kilometres away. You can pick it up on the coastal floodplain in the sediments down there. This map here shows the Macleay River catchment. The orange area is the primary mining area in Baker's Creek, and the blue shows the river there. So the UNE, University of New England, some researchers there did some great work in the early 2000s, quantifying the extent of the sediment contamination, both in the upper catchment and also in the lower floodplain. Yeah, so there's some great work done. But despite that work, yeah, until recently there had been no systematic study of water quality. So we really didn't know what was happening in the river in terms of water. This project was aimed at trying to fill that gap and understand how it was impacting water. So the sampling period for this project was between 2016 and 2023. So it's quite recent, 7 years. Water samples themselves were collected downstream at Bellbrook. Many of you might know it. It's about 168 kilometres downstream from the primary mining area. We were quite lucky over the course of the study to experience a range of different seasonal conditions, from full-on drought to big floods and everything in between, which was great because that gave us an idea of how the river behaves under different conditions. Yeah? So let's have a look at arsenic to start with. So despite the fact that arsenic was elevated due to mining impacts, it didn't exceed drinking water guideline values at Bellbrook, yeah, which is 10 parts per billion, represented by that dashed line. All of those green dots are all of the data, yep, over 500 samples over 7 years. So this is good, yeah, it didn't go over the guideline values at Bellbrook at least. But arsenic does display a really interesting seasonal pattern. Yep, you can see the green dots here where we basically get these repeated peaks happening during the summer. Yeah, and this is most noticeable when we have periods of lower flow in the river. And if we overlay water temperature on top of this, which is the red line here, you can see how those peaks are associated with the warmer water conditions. And if we take all of this data and put it into one little plot, yeah, and look at it, you can see that as the water temperature goes up, the arsenic concentrations go up. And that relationship is really, really significant. It's being driven by biogeochemical processes that are taking place in the riverbed sediments themselves, little bacteria that are happier when it's warmer, basically. Don't have time to explain the details of that, but it is consistent with other studies that have been done in rivers around the world that have been contaminated by arsenic from mining. So, that's arsenic. Antimony, a little bit different. So antimony had a wider range of concentrations than arsenic, and it did exceed drinking water guideline values on multiple occasions. In fact, about 17% of the total number of samples that we collected exceeded the drinking water guideline threshold value. Antimony over time is different, quite different to arsenic, and it's a bit more sort of peaky, if you like. We get these short-term spikes in concentrations, and this is partly related to flow in the river, but it's actually quite complicated. We investigated this in a lot of detail, trying to understand these peaks, and the essential message for antimony is that it's where the rain falls that's really, really important in the Macleay. So if you end up with a bunch of rain over Baker's Creek, yeah, which is the primary sort of mining area, but not much rain elsewhere, that's more likely to lead to a spike in the concentrations in water downstream at Bellbrook. Whereas if you get the same amount of rain, yeah, at Baker's Creek, but it's also uniformly spread across the catchment, you're going to get dilution from all of the other tributaries, and you're less likely to see a spike downstream at Bellbrook. So dilution matters a lot. It's really important. In terms of annual export loads, so this is like how much the river is carrying downstream in total amounts. It really varies between dry years and wet years. So for antimony, in a really dry year, our driest year we had, which was back in 2018, 2019, I think, when it was really, really, really dry, it's only 30 kilograms. In a wet year, up to 8,000 kilograms. So it's 8 tonnes being transported downstream. And for antimony, most of it's being transported dissolved in the water. Yeah? Arsenic's different. Arsenic has a larger range from 70 kilograms to 14,000 kilograms, so 14 tonnes. But for arsenic, more was being transported as sediment, suspended in the river, versus being dissolved in the water. Yeah? So they behave differently. Now, because we had over 500 data points, we were able to construct relationships between the flow in the river and the total export of antimony and arsenic. And this enabled us to estimate the historic daily export of antimony and arsenic all the way back to 1970, because we had flow data from the river for then. And so that enabled us to better account for that seasonal variability, yeah, and the fact that you have dry years and wet years. So when you weave all of this data together, and there's a lot of it, we're able to estimate how long this legacy might last, yeah, in the Macleay. Now, based on the University of New England research, there was estimated to be about 1,500 tonnes of antimony in total that have been mobilised into the sediments in the river as a consequence of mining. Now, if we assume that these current rates of export that we've measured remain reasonably constant and allowing for that seasonal variability as well, the data indicates that it will take somewhere in the order of about 600 to 1,000 years, yeah, before the mining-associated antimony is leached out of the river system, and the river ends up cleaning itself up and returning to pre-mining conditions. So we're talking about a really long-lived legacy, yeah, that's many, many generations, yeah, that it will impact. So how might this relate to the Clarence? Well, on the Clarence, on the edge of the Dorrigo Plateau, right at the very junction of the Nimboida River and Wild Cattle Creek, is the Wild Creek antimony deposit, yeah, which some of you may have heard of. It's the focus of the current exploration licence. Now, this is a very, very similar type of ore body to what's in Baker's Creek in the Macleay, yeah, in that it has stibnite as the antimony ore, but it also contains arsenopyrite as well. There's about 30,000 tonnes of antimony is estimated to be in that ore body. However, it's only 55 kilometres upstream from the Nimboida Weir, yeah, which is our municipal water supply outtake point for Shannon Creek Dam, which supplies the whole lower Clarence. And between where that ore deposit is and the Nimboida Weir, there's actually very few tributaries, major tributaries that come in. You've really only got the Blix and the little Nimboida, so there's little opportunity for sort of dilution en route, if you like. So I'm aware that was a super quick summary, yeah, that was like a speed date with a scientist in a way, but there's a lot more depth behind this research, and if anybody's interested, just please flick me an email. More than happy to send through copies of the papers. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Scott. the reason that we've ticketed these events isn't to make money or just really we wanted to get your email, not to pass it on to anybody, but in case any of these amazing speakers have stuff to share, we can then forward that on to you, and also to unite the community. If there's things going on, we'd like to be able to communicate with you. So if you haven't already given us your email address and you want all this information, please do so before you go. So I'd like to introduce now Janet Kavanagh from the Clarence Environment Centre, and talking about the ecosystems at risk and our beautiful little species. Thanks.
So hi everyone. So I'm from the Clarence Environment Centre, which is actually the umbrella group that looks after everything administrivia for the Clarence Catchment Alliance. And I'd like to make a plug. If you're interested in protecting the environment, we are certainly actively looking for more and more members. We're a accredited charity, so any donations to the CCA campaign can be a tax-deductible donation. Okay, so my first interest in threatened species in relation to mining happened back in the 1990s. Timbara. Timbara Plateau was known habitat and home to many threatened species. I've got here the Hastings River mouse, the New England tree frog, stuttering frog, and Pugh's mountain frog, which hadn't been officially named but was still considered as part of the Filoria loveridgei clade at that time. So gold mining happened and was approved in 1996 without a species impact statement, even though it was known habitat to these threatened species. The mining technique they were using was to extract the ore, put it in a huge pile, a heap, and then spray it with cyanide to extract the gold. So known as a heat leach pad method. It took until 1999 to find that it was a jurisdictional fact that likely to significantly affect threatened species could have been reviewed in the courts, and finally that gave the green light to say that the approval by Tenterfield Shire Council could have been reviewed. So it was not captured. So this is part of the issue that it was 1996, the Threatened Species Conservation Act had come in, but because the planning approval process had commenced before then, it didn't have the set test of significance. So for this one, it was basically up to Tenterfield Shire as the consent authority to make a guess. And they guessed it wrong. I remember talking to someone from Forestry Corp at the time, the Forestry Commission of New South Wales, as they were in those days. The Hastings River mouse was so important that in those days you couldn't log a tree within 50 metres of a known Hastings River mouse record. This mining company had permission to basically remove a mountaintop that was known to have many records of the species. And what could go wrong? Well, unfortunately, despite when it was opened and every minister for mining and everyone at the official mining, at the opening of the mine said this was best practice, nothing can go wrong. In 2001, after a couple of years of wet weather, the dam that was meant to collect all the cyanide-containing water at the base of their leach heap overflowed. It flowed into Nelson's Creek, which then went into the Timbara River, which then entered the Clarence River. That dam was supposedly designed for a 1 in 400 year event. The event that led to that overflow, the first one was a 1 in 10 year event. Downstream swamps, which were home to those 3 threatened frogs, that was severely affected. But But we didn't have the major disaster in the Clarence that could have happened, and that was basically because the mine had been put into care and maintenance in 1999 with that court case. It ceased operation in 2000, so there wasn't much cyanide in the dam. And the reason it had been closed, you've got the court case, you had blockades at the mine site. We had media attention. We had debates in Parliament about whether cyanide leach heap methods should actually be allowed in New South Wales. But officially, it had been closed because of the unusually wet weather. So we're really lucky that we avoided a major disaster. But yeah, that's a lesson to be learnt. We don't want to be in that situation again. And we're really grateful to people in the Nimboida Environment Centre, the Rainforest Information Centre, who basically collected and organised the campaign and the on-site presence to avoid, to close that mine. So the Clarence threatened species, it's a little bit less than the 400. I'm just doing the test, but that doesn't include the migratory species that are listed just under the EPBC Act, the Environment Protection Biodiversity Conservation Act. And I've also excluded the whales and the sea turtles that also call the Clarence home. And I'm not 100% sure on how many threatened fish there are. I'll defer to Stuart on that. But I think there's some land crays that have recently been listed. So just quickly going through these, we've got some beautiful birds in our area. The barking owls are important, the grey-crowned babblers. So the glossy black cockatoos and the owls, they rely on the old trees, which have hollows in which to breed. We've got Albert's lyrebird in our catchment. It only occurs in the northern part of the catchment. It's a smaller cousin of the superb lyrebird, but it is highly threatened in New South Wales. Black-necked storks, of course I wouldn't call them Jabiru in Greg Clancy's presence, and they rely on the swamps, and good quality swamps in our area. In our mammals, we've got, again, a lot of threatened species that rely on our old trees, which have developed hollows. We've got greater gliders, brush-tail phascogales. I could add the yellow-bellied glider, the squirrel glider as well. Spotted-tailed quolls are quite common in our area, and it's been a very long time since anyone saw an eastern quoll in our area. But we also have the beautiful little rufous bettong, which are diminishing in numbers, and the brush-tail rock wallaby. I remember reviewing an EIS for a gold mine on the Sara River, which flows into the Guy Fawkes, which flows into the Boyd, which flows into the Nimboida, and the Man, and eventually the Clarence. But in that EIS, they made the comment that, we recognise that the brush-tail rock wallaby is threatened at the state level, but in this area they're so common they can't be considered threatened. And that is the quality of EISs that we had in the 1990s. That gold mine didn't proceed, and the area is now actually part of Guy Fawkes River National Park. And of course, I've forgotten the two important, most common threatened mammals that we find in our area. The grey-headed flying fox is part of the Clarence Environment Centre's logo. And of course, we have the koala. Our area, our catchment, includes parts of the Great Koala National Park proposal, and there are several exploration licences that cover that proposed national park. Reptiles, we've got some beautiful snakes. The Stevens banded snake, it's a nocturnal species. It's venomous, but it's gorgeous. And the white-crowned snake, which is less of a hazard to us. We've got the rainforest cool skink, also known as the beach skink, that turns up in our rainforests areas. In terms of insects, we've got some of the largest dragonfly in the state occurs here, the giant dragonfly, but we've also got the coastal petaltail. In our rainforest areas, we have the shorter rainforest ground beetle, which you probably haven't seen because it spends most of its life in a burrow in the ground. But along the Richmond Range, so Cambridge Plateau, which is in the Clarence side of the Richmond Range, there's quite a lot of records of that. And it's actually, of the threatened insects in the Clarence catchment, it's that little ground beetle that's got many more records than actually any other threatened insect. And I've included a photo there of the southern pink underwing moth's caterpillar. Like, if you've got some subtropical rainforest on your property, they've got their only feed tree grows in vine, grows in subtropical rainforest. And I don't want to steal Stuart's thunder, but yes, we do have threatened fish, the purple spotted gudgeons, known from Mangrove Creek. Oxley pygmy perch is known from the flats around Bunjalung National Park and flow into the Esk River. And of course, we've got the eastern freshwater cod. In terms of plants, there are too many for me to go through in much detail, but I just wanted to point out the diversity and that maybe you think that they're quite common. So rapswattle, when it's in flower on Coaldale Road, you could claim that this is the most common wattle in the world, but it's only found along that stretch of road in the Coaldale. But we've got the variation from this tiny slender screw fern, which most people don't notice because they just tread on it, to the square-fruited ironbark, which is a massive tree. Now, one of the reasons that we have such a diversity of threatened species, and so many threatened species, because there's a diversity of habitat available in our catchment. Our catchment ranges from over 1,600 metres above sea level down to obviously sea level. And so we've got some areas in the New England bioregion which are part of the catchment. So our ecological communities, the threatened ecological communities, include things like the New England peppermint woodland, which occurs on basalts. We've got the upland wetlands of the drainage divide. So they're still part of the Clarence catchment, and they're still areas where mining interests may occur. Coming down the slopes, we've got the white gum moist forest in the New South Wales North Coast bioregion. We've also got lowland rainforest. And we've got the critically endangered coastal rainforest, the littoral rainforest and vine thickets. And sometimes that lowland rainforest is on floodplains. So Susan Island is the most obvious example in Grafton. There's also Karamba Nature Reserve. There's lots of other gallery rainforests that would meet that definition. Also on the floodplain, we've got the swamp sclerophyll forests and the swamp oak forests. And they're really important for our threatened species, such as the brolga, when you've got the freshwater wetlands on our coastal floodplains. And so that's what I wanted to talk about.
Thanks so much, Janet. We were going to have a little break, but we've gone over, and we've actually got someone waiting to join us via Zoom online. So we're hoping, Stuart, you might be able to speak after the break. So we're going to cross to Ella Bancroft, and then we're going to take a little break so that Ella can get on with her day. She's really graciously joining us via Zoom so she can fit it in. So we're just going to join right now to Ella. Are you guys at the back okay to... We've got everything ready for that? The tech bit I'm not too sure about. Set it up, but the rest I'm hoping. Fingers crossed. Sorry about that. I was going to, and then someone just wanted to. But anyway, we're having. Hey, you just there. All right. I'll wait. Sorry. Here's Ella. Hi, Ella. We can see you on the screen, but I've just given everyone a little quick minute break because we scheduled a break, but we went over. So they're just going to have a little stretch and a walk around, and then we'll come back. All right. Yeah, all right. I'll send you a text. Maybe like 2 minutes. Okay, thank you. Bye.
your thesis going?
Like Christmas
Oh, like Christmas or
next year.
oh, did you get it?
About yours.
Oh, yeah, it's on WordPress. I've got it on WordPress. Links actually. Still need some more work too.
Oh, it's there again.
Only there, and you can read it now, but it needs a bit of finessing.
Yeah, she's going to.
Yeah, WordPress is actually to go. It's not like a blog. You can blog in what's happening. Yeah, that's basically read by now.
Okay, here we go. We're going to cross over to Ella now. She's just muted herself and turned off her camera so that she's not just sitting there staring at the screen. I've just texted her, so hopefully she jumps on now. She's there. There she is. Hi, Ella. I think maybe if we could turn.
Jingila, everyone. I'm not sure if you're all there. I think you are. It's interesting zooming in, but thanks for having me zoomed in. I had my best friend's blessing away this morning and had to pick my little sister up from Gold Coast Airport, so happy to be here. Before I start, I'd just like to do a acknowledgement. Chandaminda, Garamagaliba, Nalanga, Banjuang Jogan. I'd just like to pay my respects, Garama, and acknowledgements, Chandaminda, out to Jogan country, Banjuang nation in which we sit. And I like to acknowledge country because I like to bring country into the conversation. I think it's important to do before speaking or gathering. I think it's important to remind us that country is a part of our community also, and that when I acknowledge country, I'm acknowledging our elders, those who have kept our culture strong, but I'm also acknowledging the mountains and the rivers and the trees and the animals that helped raise us and also keep our community safe since time immemorial. I'm here today to talk about the waters. I was born on Gadigal country, for those of you who don't know. I'm daughter of Roman Bancroft. My family line goes back to Budgerigum, which is also known as Lionsville, just outside of Grafton. I also had the privilege of going home when I was 5 and living out in our family home there. And I think at that age, I always tell people we lived off-grid before off-grid was trendy. But really the river was our lifeline. The Washpool Creek was what we utilised for bathing, for playing, for cooking, and we didn't have electricity out there, and we had to pump the water from the river. And really, when you're living like that, you get an embodied experience of what it's like to really be in relationship with the elements. I think this is probably the first kind of seed of my understanding of who I was within the bigger picture of country. And since that point, I've, grown into an adult, and a lot of my work is around supporting and bringing country back into the mainstream culture, which is constantly trying to reinforce this separation between us as human beings and the natural world that also raised us. The importance of that Washpool Creek when I was growing up, and not just me, but all the Indigenous communities out there, but Mullabugama and Bayugal, who relied on that river, up at Colum, and then people that just came on the weekends to camp by that river and be by that river. It has been in our family for generations, as it has many other Bunjalung people and many other nations that have walked these lands. I don't know where to start when it comes to how we need to show up to protect the rivers, because it feels like one of the most important things that we could be doing. The not only cultural significance, but our literal livelihood relies on our waters being clean, and Bundjalung Nation is the 5-river nation. You know, freshwater, saltwater people, water plays a massive part in our culture, and I see it as a cultural responsibility for me to stand up and speak for the waters as they can't speak for themselves. And remind us, you know, just in a day, how often we use water, whether we're brushing our teeth or cooking our food or making cups of tea for our aunties and uncles, whatever it is, I feel like water is touching our lives daily. Protecting the waters and protecting country is more important than anything else right now. You know, I think there's been a big illusion and a big colonial lie cast upon the masses of those who now occupy this country, that somehow we don't need to look after the very thing that makes us thrive. When you look back at everything that we use in our day-to-day life, everything we consume, everything comes back to country, to the waters, to the land, to the soils, to the plants, to the trees, to the animals. And it is our responsibility as human beings here to reclaim our custodianship and take up our caring and protecting roles to look after those rivers and country, as our old people did since time immemorial. And if you aren't from this land, or your lineage doesn't tie your bloodline to this land, it's still your responsibility, because you also once had a well and connected ancestor that once cared and protected for waters and lands across the globe where your bloodlines may take you, and that person was disconnected due to colonial forces. So there's a unifying story for us here as human beings at this time in 2025, when we are faced with poisoned rivers, floods, fires, climate disasters, rising sea levels, Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters not sure whether their islands will be around in 30 years. It's time for us to now walk together. We all need to unify in our role as custodians and really be aware of what and why we are extracting, what kind of world we do want to leave for the next generation, and why we're actually choosing to do things like mine the rivers and take the minerals out of the ground that are so needed, not just for us, but for our more than human kin. I think now is a time to question everything more than ever. I think that people
Sorry, everyone. Joys of technology.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened or if you can hear me. Mercury retrograde technology. I think something's playing up. Yeah, so sorry, I've just lost my train of thought because the computer just shut down and I can't see any of you, so I just feel like I'm talking to myself. Yeah, I guess I probably don't have that much more time to speak, but a lot of, I guess the work that I do is about trying to help encourage and spread messages of care and, oh hi, there's people. Yeah, returning to caring for the country and I guess a unifying of our story here as human beings to reclaim our purpose, you know, in a world where we've never seen so many disconnected souls from their ancestral lands. There's something that this story brings us, and when we can unify and stand together and reclaim our right, our birthright as a human species, to show up as the true custodians, and to show up including country in community, to show up ensuring our more than human kin are protected, just the same way we would protect our own family. This, I think, is the greatest reclamation. It's also the greatest resistance to the colony and the capitalist agenda. So for me, I hope that I can walk through the world inspiring other people to return to the waters, to not just care for them, but to fight for them, to listen to them, to pray to them, to sing to them, and to include them in your community. As somebody that grew up in the Washpool Creek, a river that is one of the many that flow into the Clarence, which is one of our greatest rivers and border for the Yaegul, Gumbaynggirr, Bundjalung people. It's an honour to see that creek and that river as part of my kin, to fight for it and to care for the waterways on Bundjalung, where I currently am closer to the coast. So Boggle Bear, I know I only had a couple, 7 minutes or something, and I'm not sure where I'm at time. But Boggle Bear for listening to me, and Boggle Bear for letting me zoom in. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We've got so.
Oh, there's my cousin. Hi, baby.
Everyone's so happy that you've joined us, and we thank you so much for taking time out of your really busy day. It means a lot.
I would have loved to get there in person. I just have babies coming and a sister coming, so many things I'm just juggling.
Yeah. Well, you are presenting to a full room of amazing people that have just loved everything that you said. So thank you very much.
I also just want to let you all know that also on the 1st and the 5th, I don't know if I'm still online,
You're still going.
but the 1st and the 5th of September, we're running a water law and fire law cultural camp over at UK if anyone's interested.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ella. Chat soon. Okay. Right. Well, there you go. Thank you. Wow. That was just absolutely amazing, and so much knowledge, so much passion, and just doing amazing things. Ella is an amazing young woman, published author, poet, CEO, has founded her own organisation and is just doing amazing work. And when I reached out, I was just so hoping that she'd be able to join us. And thank you, Danielle, too, for really being a go-between with some of our speakers over this event series. It's really, really wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk to Stuart now about the Eastern Freshwater Cod. Stuart. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to see you all here on this really important occasion and see so many familiar faces. Congratulations to Shay and Lizzie and the CCA for putting this roadshow together. It is really important in terms of the health of our wonderful Clarence River system. Thanks to the preceding speakers, it's been really, really relevant stuff, really important and very well presented from Scott and Janet and that inspirational talk from Ella. I'm a retired principal research scientist who worked for New South Wales Fisheries for 36 years, and my main topics of research were native freshwater fish and a range of topics, taxonomy, biology, conservation and aquaculture. Very rich and very humbled to have had such a great career. In 1979, I was asked by the department to investigate the fish fauna of the Clarence system. We developed techniques to breed Murray cod at Narandra, where I was based at the time, and we were getting requests from the Northern Rivers area to stock Murray cod into the Clarence and the Richmond River system. And there was no records in the New South Wales fisheries in the department of this species in this area, and so I was asked to investigate. And basically what I found was that there was a very small number of cod. They were found in isolated upper reaches of the Clarence system, in particular the Man and Nimboida rivers above Jack Adgery. There was very few fish left, and those fish we found through various research techniques to be a separate species to Murray cod. And Murray cod, which is the dominant top predator of the Murray-Darling River system, found throughout the Murray-Darling River system. We assumed that the fish in the Clarence might have been Murray cod, and they weren't. They were separate species. And when I looked at the history of the river systems with Aboriginal contacts and anecdotal and historical information, we realised that freshwater cod were extremely abundant in all the river systems from the Clarence River in the south to north to the Burnett system in southern Queensland. But by the time I'd started my research, cod were extinct in most of these river systems. So they'd gone from the Brisbane River system and from the Richmond River system and the Logan and the Burnett and so on. Only two small isolated populations, species were left in the Clarence and in the Mary, and they were both separate species to the original Murray cod. So we had two endangered species, and this is way back in the 1980s, before the words endangered and conservation were even used regularly like they are today. And the department I worked for at the time was a magnificent department, very committed to the conservation and the management of freshwater fishes and other fishes in New South Wales, and they asked me to establish a research centre at Grafton, so I moved from Narandra to Grafton. And we started a conservation project. We developed techniques to breed the eastern cod to restock areas where they'd disappeared from. And we put in a prohibition against the capture, and I think it was mentioned earlier, we also put a fishing closure. So important is this fish to the department, to the state, and to the people up here that we stopped people fishing from in the upper reaches of the Clarence River system for 3 months of the year to cover the breeding season of eastern freshwater cod. The species has recovered strongly. It's still nowhere near what its original distribution was in the Clarence system. We've restocked some into the Richmond River system where they're struggling to develop into a good breeding population, but at least they're in there. So it really has been a conservation success story that's taken decades to emerge. But they are recovering, and they're really abundant now in rivers like the Nimboida and the Man, where there's still good quality habitat. The species has been mentioned. I won't spend much time on it. It was extremely important to the local Aborigines, to the Bundjalung and Gumbaynggirr people. They both had different names for it. There was a sacred site in the Nimboida River. It was basically a totem species to both groups. I'll give you a good example which linked a little bit to Ella. On one field trip in the early days, I was trying to determine when the species breed, so we could protect them at least in their breeding season, know where they bred and when they bred. And I took who became a good mate, an Aborigine, Bobby Marsh, who grew up on the wash pool like Ella did back in the day, and we were going on a field trip to the wash pool and to try and catch some cod and see when they were breeding. And Bob said, we're driving out there, and Bob said, they're breeding now. And I said, well, how do you know, Bob? And he says, because the dogwood is flowering. And so the dogwood's an acacia, that's that straggly acacia that grows along the sides of the roads and in rocky habitats, and has the really bright orange flower. And then he said, and I said, how long it will last? He said, when the dogwood has finished flowering and the flowers all die, the breeding season's finished. And so when I used my biological techniques of the white man, he was precisely right, of course. There was a very short confined breeding season. So that was really interesting. And it was a great example to me about this wonderful knowledge that Aboriginal people have of the eastern freshwater cod in that case, but all flora and fauna and that complex flora and fauna that we heard from Janet. So it was a wonderful story to me. Why did the eastern freshwater cod decline and basically was just about to extinction? The numbers of both the Mary River cod and certainly the eastern freshwater cod we estimated many years ago was less than 1,000 total fish. And it's hard to estimate it because of the rugged nature of the Clarence and the diverse habitats that it lived in. But that was my estimate. And then when we did the genetic study where we can quantify how the genetics have developed that we see today, then it suggested that my estimate of 1,000 total fish was probably a little bit high. So there was far less than 1,000. So the species was basically on the brink of extinction. A number of factors drove it to there. One was just habitat destruction. So the early settlers, of course, in these valleys were the cedar cutters. So they came in and cut all the cedar trees down and exposed the riverbanks because the cedar grew right on the riverbanks. And then when they cut the cedar down, they moved into the hardwood forest just beyond them. So you look at old photographs of our valleys back in early settlement in the 1930s and 40s, and total denuded riverbanks and so on. And so the silt was rushed in, the ashes and the rocks, and all of a sudden the habitat filled up and there was no riparian vegetation. So it declined quickly. There was some natural pollution after droughts and fires and rain, and it washed a lot of rubbish into the rivers, and that killed a lot of fish, including a lot of cod. Us white Aussies dynamited them all the way along the Orara River when we were building the North Coast Railway. And so they disappeared from the Orara River in 1926, and that was the year we built the railway from Coffs to Grafton. And so we had a devastating effect. But one of the key factors that did drive them to extinction, in my opinion, or near extinction, in my opinion, was mining. So we have a very mineral-rich valley, as you know, and we've heard Scott talk about the minerals in the Upper Macleay. Well, it was the same in the Clarence. There was a lot of mines. There was copper mines and gold mines and tin mines and coal mines and so on, scattered around the valley. And if you look at the history and the records from the late 1800s through to about the 1940s, there was repeated reports about fish kills in the river. And they were all linked to the mining. So the mines were in the rivers like they were in the Macleay, or they were right alongside them, of course, up on the wash pool, including at Solferino was a mine up there right on the river, and so the cod disappeared out of the wash pool and that part of the Clarence and so on. So mining had a really key role. I just wanted to read a couple of quotes, and this is out of the Sydney Morning Herald. So back in the day, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, the Sydney Morning Herald was one of the key ways that people in regional areas and throughout the state communicated. Sydney Morning Herald, 1920s and 30s, these two quotes are from. Concern is felt by fishermen and stockmen at the pollution of the waters of the Man, Mitchell and Clarence rivers by chemicals employed in mining. Large numbers of fish in the Clarence have been found dead. A Jackadri resident stated that the recent river was polluted for 3 weeks, and that sometimes that trouble lasted for 4 months. So these were regular events. Another one, indignation has been caused in the Upper Clarence by the recurrence of pollution of the waters of the Clarence River and its tributaries. The pollution is due to mining operations in the upper reaches of the river. People cannot use the water anywhere. Cattle don't drink the water, and fish are dying everywhere. The problem is serious. This was just regular over decades in our river. When I started my research, and I spoke to the old timers, Aborigines and white Australians, they all recognised that it was a serious problem for the valley, but they just sort of said it was part of development. It was part of life. You know, and you can understand it. There was an ignorance towards the need for rivers. It was a white Australian ignorance, of course, but that was just the way. It's interesting that in the early white settlement, and obviously prior in Aboriginal history, the gorge was a stronghold. Now, most of you know the Clarence River Gorge, very famous and one of the magnificent features of our great river system. The Clarence River Gorge was a stronghold of eastern freshwater cod for all white man's history until the 1930s, and then they just disappeared. And when I used to ask the old timers, they're all passed away now, people like Jack Rogan and Sid Adams, and there were cattlemen, the Winters who settled the gorge in the late 1800s, Bobby Marsh, Aborigine, Pat Bancroft, and so on, all accused pollution from the copper mine at Kangi, which has been mentioned, causing periodic kills over decades of fish through that area. And now we have it, and cod completely disappeared by the 1930s. And so that disappearance in that wonderful, it was always extremely good fish habitat, still is, and we've got cod back in there through conservation actions. But you know, the mining has played an extremely important role in driving eastern freshwater cod to extinction. That and other factors in some of the other river systems. So the mining has a very long history of polluting and affecting aquatic ecosystems in Australia. From the 1880s, a copper mine polluted Lake George and decimated a Murray cod fishery there. And it goes right through to the history in the Clarence and the link to pollution from mining, right through to the early 2012, I think. There's some copper mines in northern Queensland and in Western Australia where copper mines have polluted rivers and aquatic ecosystems. They've killed all the fish and the platypus and so on, and the animals haven't returned. So it's as long term as we heard from Scott. These pollution events are long term because of the devastating effects and the long life of these chemicals. And so it's a real strong message that needs to be taken, that mining is a key factor in the health of aquatic ecosystems. It's not just the freshwater ecosystems too that were devastated and can be devastated by this sort of pollution. The estuarine ecosystems and the offshore ecosystems and their productivity is closely linked to the freshwater input. The floods we have are not wasted water. They bring the nutrients, the organic matter, the silt that are part of driving the whole river ecosystem. So we need to protect the freshwater ecosystems to have healthy estuarine ecosystems and offshore marine ecosystems. And I just want to finish by just a simple saying that I tell people: we can do without silver and gold and antimony and cobalt or whatever. We can't do without fresh water. It is the single most important resource that nature provides for life on Earth, whether it's humans or all sorts of ecosystems. Throughout the world, we have destroyed many of the freshwater ecosystems. They're very restricted in number and quality. Their quality has been degraded. And it's imperative that we don't further degrade a great river system, one of the great river systems in Australia, in the Clarence River system. So it's just, it's so important, because we would hate for people to look back on what we've said here and what science has told us. Science and history are basically ignored in our culture, unfortunately, and to our detriment. And so it's you know, to maintain the health of our great freshwater ecosystem here, it is at great risk to any future mining. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Stuart. We hope that we can get some of that evidence from those old newspapers to take to Parliament. We hope even more, perhaps we might just take Stuart to Parliament. Yeah. The Codfather, he's known as. I'm not sure if you know that, but that's Stuart's name. He's the Codfather. So he's a guru. He's probably selling books out of the back of the car, are you, Stuart? He'll sign them. Okay, well, thank you. Look, I just wanted to say we've gone over time, but we've been to events where you get the little dinger, and you get dinged off. We didn't really want to do that because everyone's just so passionate and everything's so important. So we just kind of let it flow. And so we have gone over time. So I hope you're okay to keep going. We're going to talk to Steve, and then we're going to hear from the EDO. So Steve and I are going to do like a little interview, I suppose you'd call it. So welcome, Steve. I'm just going to get my questions. I've got them on the phone. Okay. Pretty much what we did yesterday. Yeah. So Steve spoke yesterday up in Copmanhurst, and yesterday the Copmanhurst event had a lot of fishers and farmers and a great range of people from right across the community, but lots of beef farmers and also landowners up there that are also facing what Steve's facing. But Steve's is extreme. This case is extreme. Are we okay on these mics? I just want to check. No. Not really? No. Okay. Should I get that other? This? Is it on? Hello? There we go. Is this one on? Okay, is that the one on? Yes. Oh, geez, that's loud. Okay, Steve, so you can have that one. I'll stand over here out of the way. You can get that one. Okay, so first of all, I suppose we just want to learn a little bit about what's going on, and so let's just start with your property. Can you tell us a little bit about the Clarence Wilderness Lodge and your connection to the land?
So I've lived at our place for 43 years. It's 1,000 hectares, 4 kilometres of Clarence River frontage and 6 kilometres of Tulum Creek frontage. The property, we use only a small percentage of that property for our business, the Clarence River Wilderness Lodge, which is accommodation and camping. The rest we manage for its conservation values.
Okay, so you're the only, hang on, I'll restate that. You're currently the only land owner in the Clarence living under a mining licence. So that is an ML. So when you see when you're on our website, see our terminology is ML is a mining licence. What's going on up there and what's happened? Like with an active mining lease over your property, how did all that come about?
So, yeah, it all started in 2010 when we bought the adjoining property. It was valuable to us, the land beside us, for its conservation values. It had 3 brush-tail rock wallaby colonies on the property. It had about 100 acres of rainforest, and the rest of it, 90%, was old-growth forest. So in terms of conservation value, yeah, it was great. The hitch with that was that it came with 3 mining leases. Those mines hadn't been active for maybe 10 years when we bought the property. We naively didn't realise the impact of mining, of those mining leases when we bought the property. It's not long after we bought the land, or in the process of buying the land, the leases were renewed for another 11 years. So in that process, we signed an access and compensation agreement with the miner. And in those 11 years, there was 2 different investors that went in there and mined. The first one spent $800,000 and got about $30,000 worth of gold back out of it. The next investor went in there. We don't know what he spent, but he got about $27,000 worth of gold, and it caused such problems that, for him, financial problems, that he committed suicide. He drove his car off a cliff into the Tulum Creek. Then we thought that's going to be the end of it. That mining lease ran for 11 years, and we thought, yeah, it's over. Nothing will come of that. And blow me down, unknown to me, it was renewed for another 21 years. So you've got to consider this is a mine that has never produced any payable gold. The miners themselves mined off the lease. They applied 2 days before the lease was due to expire for the renewal of the lease. The company at the time didn't have a bank account. They'd been fined. There's all these things, but they were rewarded with 21 years of a new lease.
Yeah, it's a bit of an imbalance, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And Steve's not really going into all the detail of what's been going on, but this is financial, emotional, just absolute turmoil for the family. So you have said that it really is an imbalance between landholders and mining companies in terms of rights. So could you explain what you mean in terms of that, like in practice, what does that look like for your situation?
Well, for me, with the new lease coming on and the new technical manager, it was conflict from day one. About 2 weeks after the lease was renewed and I'd had notification that there was a new lease, I had a visit from the police and I was interviewed about the theft of $30,000 worth of gold, supposed theft of $30,000 worth of gold from the mine. Didn't stop there. Then a couple of months after that, I received a letter from the Mining Resource Regulator, who's like the policeman of mines in New South Wales, alleging 8 breaches of the Mining Act and a possible $22,000 fine with each breach of the Mining Act. That was found to nothing to answer with that one. And even further on from that, the new technical manager locked the gate on me into my own property. Didn't tell me, locked the gate. I had no access. It caused a medical emergency with one of our guests, not being able to get through and having to walk up a mountain, ambulance called, all that sort of thing. I rang the police about that one and they said it was a civil matter. But under New South Wales law, or the Mining Act in New South Wales, or the law in New South Wales, if I'd done the same thing to the miner, if I'd stopped him entering my property, I could have been fined $22,000. So that goes to show the imbalance of what's happening.
Yeah, it's just, it's not right. But we'll learn a little bit more from the ETO soon on landowners' rights. So what's it been, like what have the regulators done? What's the response from the regulators in terms of protecting your rights? Have they helped or where's it at?
Well, I must say, from my perspective, the regulators have a real bias towards the miner. I've been, I've contacted them on many occasions with problems with the mine, like at the moment, trying to resolve the issue of mining off lease. Their main mining pit is a third of the mining pit is towards Tulloom Creek, only about 10 metres away from the creek, and it's not on their lease. And trying to get some action on who was responsible for that mining, how to rehabilitate it, all that sort of thing. Yeah, it's been, they've been shuffling it off wherever they can. Even to the point of the resource regulator working out of their own remit and investigating me and my business. They've gone away from the Mining Act and contacted different government bodies about my own business, trying to get a bit of dirt on me. So this is a body that's supposed to be there protecting landowners' interests, protecting the environment, that sort of thing. So yeah, I haven't experienced any joy with them at all.
Thanks, Steve. So what, from your personal experience, what do you think this means for other landholders in the region who are now being approached for exploration access and also land buyouts? There's people across the region that are actually, they're dealing with mining companies that are asking them to sell their private land. So we have that coming back from other regions. What do you think it means for people just starting out this process?
Well, to be very wary, you know, apart from the impact of the mine, then you've got, from my perspective, mining companies that'll tell you anything to get in there, and in terms of government protection, there is zero. So, yeah, avoid them like a 10-foot pole.
Okay, well, look, we're working on uniting the entire region. As I said before, we're connecting with other communities across New South Wales, and the advice from them that are further progressed in this process is don't meet with mining companies alone. The divide and conquer approach is rife, and to stick together, and that's why we're collaborating across the region. in the next few days and collecting people's email addresses so we can just stand united. And the other advice from them is to, if CEOs would like to meet, call a public meeting in a public local hall and meet as a group, and then you're all across it. So we're going to hear more about that as well, but that's definitely what's coming back from other communities right across the state. Steve, finally, if you can say one thing to the ministers, and I think you're coming to Parliament with us, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely.
What could you say to them about the future of mineral mining in the Clarence Catchment? What are you going to say?
Leave our valley alone.
Thanks, Steve. We're definitely gunning for that. Yeah, that's the purpose. That's the purpose. We're going to have a panel discussion, Q&A, after the EDO address from Belinda and Jem. If you want to hang around, that would be great. As I said, sorry we're a little over time, but it's just so much stuff to get through and all great stuff. So thank you, Belinda.
I'll use this one.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah.
Oh, where's the little thingy?
Clicker. It's there. On this. Yeah, I'm just going to take that. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello, can everybody hear me? Great. So I'm Belinda, I'm a lawyer from the Environmental Defender's Office. I'd first like to acknowledge that we're here today on the unceded lands of the Bundjalung people, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present and those elders here today. For those that haven't heard about the EDO, we are a not-for-profit community legal centre. We specialise in public interest environmental law. We are largely funded by major donors and philanthropic organisations. We get a little bit of state and Commonwealth funding, and that is because we are an accredited legal practice. So today, the purpose of us coming here today is to discuss the exploration stage. So you have, as you've heard from Shay, we've had exploration licences across this valley for a long time, but you also now have exploration licence applications. So we're focusing on that stage of the process. You've heard from Steve, that's around mining leases, so it's a bit of a different process. So we're just going to be focusing on that exploration stage here. Our role really is to help you understand those legal processes. They can be a little bit complicated, and on first view, it can seem like you don't have a lot of power or a lot of rights. But because we've been working in this space for such a long time, we understand the nuances of that law, and so we're here to help you understand what rights you do have. So before I get into the legal aspect, I do just want to talk about power just for a second, because it really is at this stage of the process that you have the most power as a community. We're going to be talking a lot about sticking together, staying connected, drawing on local expertise, drawing on scientific evidence. All of those things help in order to stand in that power and to understand that you do have rights under this legislation, and that not all is lost because you have a licence over your property. So we want to help you understand that you do have that power, and particularly if you stick together, and that we're here to support you with legal information and guidance. I have to get this legal bit out of the way. All of those things that we'll be talking about today are legal information. It's not advice. So I can't give anybody individual legal advice in a forum like this. So you'll be hearing about what the law says generally about these situations. We can't drill down into particular pieces, particular licences or particular properties. So we will just be talking in a general nature. If you do, if we raise something today and you think, oh, I wonder what that means for my property, we do have a free legal advice service. So you can jump onto our website, and we have a form that you need to fill out, and we can potentially provide you with legal advice on your particular circumstance. You'll be pleased to know that we're delivering a shortened version of the slides today. We won't go through everything in detail, there is a lot to cover, but we do have the full version of those slides as a PDF that we haven't yet, we will send to Shay. And if you would like a copy of that more in-depth presentation, make sure you leave your email address wherever you can do that here, and Shay will get those slides out to you. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is how a company can gain access to your property. As a general rule, the community owns minerals even on privately owned land. Because of this, the New South Wales Government has the power to authorise others to look for and remove them from your land. A good representation of that is Swiss cheese. If this cheese represents your land, you own the cheese, the surface as well as all the way down, but you don't own the holes, as these represent mineral deposits. So the government authorises companies to look for minerals, and they do that by issuing what's known as exploration licences. Most of the time those licences are issued for a period of 6 years, and they can be very easily renewed. As you just heard from Steve, that renewal process is kind of the same for exploration and for mining. So the actual exploration itself, it involves looking for minerals and testing whether the land contains a commercial amount of the resource. So that can kind of look like just coming onto the property to have a look around and having a look to see what geological formations are on your property. They might want to take samples away, they might want to conduct seismic surveying on your land, or conduct core hole drilling. There can also be trenching, and at some stage in that process, the mining company will need to undertake environmental assessments. So they may need to come onto your property to carry out those, and that would be at a stage where they're looking to progress to actual mining. It can also include clearing of the site and the construction of roads and tracks. So if the government grants a company an exploration licence, the company will also usually need what's called an activity approval. They need to get that under a different piece of legislation, and that will depend on the type of activity that they're proposing to carry out on your land. So if you are affected by an exploration licence, it's really important that you obtain a copy of that licence so that you understand exactly the rights that have been given to the exploration company over your land. We've looked at so many of these licences, mostly they look the same. They're all subject to standard conditions. There's a list of them up there. And there may be some special conditions, but it's not very often that we see special conditions. So you have this list of standard conditions. In there also, there's a requirement to pay a security deposit, and potentially those figures can differ depending on the area that's covered by the licence, but mostly these standard conditions are the same. One of the most important ones here is in relation to the works program. So the explorers are required to have a works program and to set out in that works program what they're proposing to do across that licence and on a particular property. So it's really beneficial, if you can, to get a hold of the works program. Sometimes you'll need to do that through our freedom of information laws, but it's important to try and get as much information as you can about what's being proposed either in your area or on your particular land, so that you can prepare for that. There's also requirements in there in relation to native title, community consultation, and there is a standard condition where the licence holder must prevent or if that is not reasonably practicable, minimise so far as is reasonably practical any harm to the environment arising from activities carried out under this licence. So that is a condition, it's a standard condition. You can potentially rely on that condition to ensure if an exploration company does get access to your property that they are doing the right thing once they're on there. And it's important to note that it is an offence under the Mining Act to breach conditions of consent of a licence. It's also really important to understand before you speak to any exploration company that might be seeking access to your property, it's really important to understand that the miners themselves have restrictions under the law. So an exploration licence gives miners a lot of rights, but it also restricts what they can and can't do on your land. So you can see here that they cannot access certain areas of your land without your consent. This is why it's really important for you to understand this before you look at any kind of agreement or have any kind of conversations. So that includes within 200 metres of your house, within 50 metres of a garden, a vineyard or an orchard, and on a significant improvement. So a significant improvement is a work or a structure. There's no buffer around a significant improvement, but the explorers cannot explore on that significant improvement. And so as you see here, the most important thing here is without landholder consent. So we have heard of instances where landholders will unintentionally give that consent, and that often happens by signing the first access arrangement that is given to them. And unbeknown to that landholder, there are these legal protections set out in the Mining Act, but the access arrangement may actually get them to sign those rights away. And it's really important to also understand that if you do sign something giving away that consent, you cannot revoke it. So it's really important to have all of the information in front of you before you even consider having conversations or signing anything. So we're going to explain what significant improvements are. So as I said, they're a work or a structure. So they're on your land and they have to meet a certain criteria that's also set out in the Mining Act. It's listed there. I'm not going to read it out because it's a bit bamboozling when you just read it out. But in order for a significant improvement to exist on your property, it needs to meet that criteria. So it's really important for you to kind of start thinking now about what is on your property and what could be a significant improvement. The court has also held that exploration includes access. So that means explorers may not be able to enter or travel over a significant improvement to get to land that's not significantly improved. So that's also really important to think about, although that depends on this criteria here, which is a new one, which says that in order to be a significant improvement, it must be unable to reasonably coexist with the exercise of rights under the exploration licence. So that's a tricky one. You need to really think about that. And that, as I said, is a kind of recent addition to the law. Before that came in, we had a number of cases considered in the Land and Environment Court, because if there's a little bit of uncertainty, or if you get into a dispute with a mining company about whether something on your property is or is not a significant improvement, then you can take that to the Land and Environment Court, and the Land and Environment Court decides whether it's a significant improvement or not. So you do have that process available to you. And as I said before, that coexistence criteria came in. We had a number of cases before the Land and Environment Court, and so here are some of the practical examples of what the court has held to be significant improvements. So we're talking about paddocks with improved pastures, significant earthworks, water systems, equestrian cross-country event courses, cattle laneways, formed roads and driveways, stockyards and fencing, dams and farm sheds. But you need to remember that this list is not exhaustive. So what's on your property is unique to your property, and you need to think about it in terms of the criteria before you kind of make a determination as to what's on your land. It's also important to note that you have right up until the mine is seeking access to your property for you to establish those significant improvements on your land. So it's not what's there at this particular point in time. There may be an opportunity to consider what's currently on your land before the mine seeks access. So what you need to be really thinking about is, what do you use your land for? What improvements have been made to your land? Are they fit for purpose, or if you could just undertake some minor repairs, would they be fit for purpose? Why are they valuable? Why can't the improvements be moved? And why can't they coexist with exploration? So they're the questions you should be kind of thinking about if you think that you may be approached in the near future from a mining company. I'm now going to hand to Jem, who's going to quickly talk to you about access arrangements and also about the Commonwealth federal legislation in relation to threatened species. Take that away. It's just that.
Hi folks, my name's Jem. I am also a lawyer at the EDO and a Deputy Legal Director there. I was born and raised on Dungari and Gumbaynggirr country down south, and so this part of the world means a lot to me. My family still live down there. But today I want to pay my respects to Bundjalung people in the room and to their elders, past and present. So even if a company has an exploration licence, it still can't come onto your land unless it has an access arrangement with you. And the first sort of step in that process is they'll send you a notice of intent, or they'll come and knock on your door and say they intend to negotiate an access arrangement with you. And they'll usually accompany that notice with a draft access arrangement. So from there, you have the right to negotiate. And so an access arrangement basically sets out the terms upon which a company can come onto your land, where they can go, how they can get on, what times, and anything else that you want to negotiate with them. So you can choose to negotiate, or you might say, I don't want any exploration on my land, no thank you, and that might be where it ends, or the company might initiate the next step in the legal process, which is mediation. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with mediation. It's where a mediator, a neutral party, tries to get two people in a dispute to agree, but they don't have any power to make a decision or to force you into anything. So the company can initiate mediation and you can decide whether or not you want to attend. But if you don't attend, or if you can't agree at mediation, nothing will be imposed upon you. But from there, the company can choose to initiate the next step in the process, which is arbitration. Similar to mediation, but an arbitrator does have the power to make a decision on behalf of the parties. So they'll try to get you to agree. If you can't agree, they might say they'll have to decide whether or not access should be granted, and if so, on what terms. They'll put together a draft access arrangement, and you have a right to then comment. Both sides have a right to comment on that before it's finalised. That's only if they do grant access, by the way. And from there, either side, you or the mining company, have the right to appeal to the Land and Environment Court, and that process starts again. The court will decide whether access should be granted, and if so, on what terms. So there is no guarantee that a company will take you through each stage of this process, but it can be quite a quick process. It's 21 days by law from beginning, from the notice of intent to arbitration. And there's very short timeframes to appeal. So that's just something to keep in mind. So the first access arrangement you'd be given will have been drafted by the mining company and is almost certainly going to be very much in their favour. So you should look at this as a starting point for negotiations at most. You don't need to negotiate or attend mediation or arbitration, but a decision can be made in your absence at the arbitration stage. If you decide that you don't want to be granting access at all, it's probably better just to say that clearly up front from the outset. And as I said, there's absolutely no guarantee a company will push you through this process if you say no from the outset. At arbitration, you should be prepared to argue why you don't want to grant access, so why it shouldn't be granted. And as Belle has said, a good starting point for you there would be to think about how your land might be significantly improved, because the law says they can't explore on significant improvements. You might also consider how the buffers around your gardens and your home might operate, so that you have a good sort of solid basis for refusing access. You should also be prepared to think about, though, if you were to grant access, what those terms might be, and you can make any terms that you want, so long as they're reasonable. But you need to make access arrangements in your favour as much as possible. This is your property, your livelihood. It's obviously a very important thing in your life, and you have every right to make access arrangements as stringent as you think is required. And so long as they're reasonable, they should stand up. It's also important to remember that if they breach the access arrangement, you can deny entry, so it needs to be enforceable, and you will need a bit of assistance in order to draft it in a way that it is enforceable. IDEO has a list of things you might want to consider in developing a position on access on your land, just to make sure that your interests are protected. But like I said, you can argue why access shouldn't be granted and have a fallback position, and those two things aren't inconsistent, if you know what I mean. You're not accepting access by turning up at arbitration. It's not premised on you agreeing to access. And you can have a fallback position of the terms, and that's fine. They're not inconsistent. And so you're probably thinking, okay, well, I don't want to end up in court. I can't afford to go to court. But this is where the law really does offer landholders some protection. So most landholders would be very concerned about costs. But legally, the explorer is required to pay the reasonable costs of the landholder throughout that entire process that I just outlined, from negotiation all the way through to court. At the negotiation stage, that your reasonable costs are capped by law at about $1,500, and that's just the time it took you to engage in negotiation, right? But at the mediation, arbitration and court stage, there's no cap on costs. Your costs just need to be reasonable, and you need to have proof of what they were. The arbitrator has to be paid for by the mining company as well. And so, yeah, even if you get to court, your costs will need to be paid for by the mining company. There is an exception to this, and that's if you act unreasonably. And it's really hard for me to provide a lot of guidance on what that might look like. This term reasonable is used a lot in law, but it's not often defined. It's really just, given its general meaning, but really you need to act in good faith. This would mean, not giving a mining company the runaround, being consistent throughout the process, and that sort of thing. But it's really hard for me to define what reasonable means. But if you act unreasonably, the court could decide not to award your costs to you, and then you might be liable to pay your costs and the other side's costs of the proceedings if they do end up in court. So that's just something to be aware of. You are entitled to legal representation, and it would be my strong recommendation that you avail yourself of that. It can be really tricky to negotiate. It can be really tricky to draft or to know whether a drafted access arrangement is going to stand up to scrutiny and all the things that it should cover. So you should definitely get yourself some specialised legal advice. And with all due respect to local solicitors, specialised legal advice is required here, because the law is very technical in this space. It does require somebody who has got expertise in access arrangements, in my view, because it's very hard to see where the rights for landholders exist on a first look at the law. They're a bit hidden, and so it just does require that little bit of extra expertise. So the key takeaway really is that as a landholder, you have the right to refuse access to your land up until the point that an arbitrator or the court grants access, and an access arrangement is there to strengthen those legal protections that Belinda already went through. So, and to protect your land as much as possible from the impacts of exploration. Did you also say, Belinda, that access arrangements are only required at the exploration stage? Yeah, we've covered that. Okay. So we've heard a lot about concerns regarding threatened species in this area. We've heard about the freshwater cod and all the other lovely critters that call this valley home. And mining licences are a bit unique in the sense that they're granted without any form of environmental assessment at all. And you get an environmental assessment once we're at the works program stage, and it's called a review of environmental factors. And in the scheme of things, it's not a very comprehensive environmental assessment, and it might miss important things. And because it's considered to be quite a low-level assessment, a lot of mining companies might not turn their minds to whether or not they also need approval under the federal environmental law. So, it's possible that they do, and so any approvals required at the state level may be complemented by the need for approval at the federal level as well. They're separate but related approvals. So our EPBC Act is our federal environmental law, and it applies to matters of national environmental significance. They're called triggers under the Act. So the main triggers that would be relevant to this valley would be federally listed threatened species and ecological communities, Ramsar wetlands potentially, if you've got some of those in the valley, and migratory species. So they're the things that are protected at the federal level. And if an action, that is exploration, is likely to have a significant impact on any of these things, then it needs to be referred to the federal minister for a decision and approval. And if that approval isn't granted, then the whole thing can't go ahead. So we're looking at a significant impact or a likely significant impact on a protected matter, mainly threatened species, Ramsar wetlands. The mining company is responsible for referring it. But if they don't, and you have concerns that a protected matter may be significantly impacted, you can contact the department and request the minister to call that project in. And EDO can provide assistance if you do have those concerns. So reach out to us. So mining companies, we all know, mining companies often use divide and conquer strategies within communities to get landholders to sign agreements or sell their land or do any of a number of things to help the company get a foothold onto the land. They may say many things to make you feel like you're the lone holdout in a situation, and that it's a sort of fait accompli that they're going to be on your property in due course, so why bother resisting? They may offer you money to sign an access arrangement. They may tell you that you'll get a better deal if you sign with them early than if you go through the process and a court or an arbitrator have to make those decisions. That is incredibly unlikely. They may use locals to try and negotiate access arrangements with you. And they will almost certainly use confidentiality agreements inside access arrangements to prevent you from talking to your neighbours or to anyone else about the terms of the access arrangement and anything that flows from it. So right now, while you're not bound, is a good time to talk and to connect with each other and to share what you're being told if you are speaking to mining companies. It's really not advisable to sign the first access agreement that you're given. And if you do sign an access arrangement, you should get legal advice first. You don't have to negotiate unless you want to. You should keep records of all of your negotiations. If you attend mediation and arbitration, you can always argue why access should not be granted. You do not have to be there just to talk about the terms of access. You can be there to talk about why access should not be granted. You should be prepared with a list of significant improvements over your property. If your property has a boundary fence, or if you have a boundary fence, planting a garden at every gate may expand the protections for your land. Because the fence is a significant improvement and can't be touched, and the garden provides a 50-metre buffer. So you need to think creatively about these legal protections, and that's what I mean by you have to look carefully at the law and think about what the protection is, and a lot of lawyers are not going to do that, so you need specialist advice. Keep records of all expenditure and the time that you spend on negotiating or thinking about or planning for an access arrangement, because your costs can be recovered from the company. Stick together, and I can see that you already are. Share information so that you're not isolated from each other and you can't all be told different things. And that's really to protect you from divide and conquer strategies that have been used against other communities facing exploration and mining. And ensure that all communications you have with the company are in writing. Even if it's a phone call, write down what it was that you talked about as soon as you hang up, so that you've always got a good contemporaneous record of what happened. Thank you. I know this is a lot at the end of a long session, so thanks. That's the key messages from EDO. We've got a more detailed presentation that we will share with a bit more detail. But these are the high-level messages, and I hope you find them encouraging in some way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to both of you. A 4-day roadshow. We're off to Drake tomorrow, and then we're off to Dorrigo as well. So thank you so much for coming all the way from Sydney and sharing everything with our community. And, you know, we are taking away a lot, and I think the key is unity and connectedness and making sure we all know what's going on. I found that the biosecurity point is really interesting. There's an ant issue, there's tick issues. If you're concerned about anyone bringing anything across your fence, I'm sure I would be. I found that part really interesting. I don't think I picked that up yesterday, so it's good to watch this a few times. Look, we're going to do a Q&A, and again, it is a long session. There's so much info. We're definitely going to do a little Q&A. Before we get into that, I just wanted to do a little shameless plug for the CCO. As I said, we're off to Parliament. I want to just let you know that we're not funded. We don't have any funding at all. We're all volunteers. So I just wanted to share that with you. We're not paid to do this. There's no vested interest in any of this. So if you'd like to buy a little sticker, they're $6, and that'll help us get to Sydney to go and meet the ministers. So they're up the back. And of course, as I said, please make a statement. Those statements are just so important. It helps us prove we've granted no social licence, or people are holding them up. Thank you. They've already bought some. There's a QR code on that sticker that'll take you straight to the form to autofill a statement. And if you're a community leader that hasn't signed the pledge yet, please find Elizabeth up the back at the end, and if you want to sign on with that pledge. We've got, I think around 40 people now, community members, that have signed that really important pledge, and as I said, we're going to hand those to the ministers. All that evidence helps us prove we've granted no social licence. So let's do a bit of a Q&A. I'm sure everyone's got lots of questions, and we have put down that we're here till 4. We'd hope to have a bit of a mingle and a bit of an informal chat, but I think this is really important to also get into. So Lillian, I'm going to ask if you might be able to do the microphone for the crowd. Is that okay? Thank you.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but a member of the community let me know that there was a mining surveyor at the Woolai Club in the last week or so, exploring at the top of the Woolai River and further inland of there, and incentivised this young man with offers of jobs in the future, that there's going to be a lot more mining than they've actually put ALs in for. So she was actually doing surveying at the top of the Woolai, where the fork and the rivers are. Sure.
Oh, so you've got a whole two.
Yeah.
About the live feed.
Yeah. And also, about 30 years ago, there was fish kills in the river, and I was working at the Environment Centre at the time, and I lobbied government and others because I was informed by some Indigenous community members that at Drake there was leaching of, all of the above, and it took 3 years and much lobbying of government, the DDP and the Environment Protection Authority at the time. But that's the kind of timeline they'll stretch you to before they finally prosecuted the company. That evidence is at the Environment Centre if you got wrapped through there. So it is possible to get a prosecution, but I'd also like to recommend that people who are threatened by that do some water assessments prior to any exploration or anyone even walking on your property. Start getting samples of your water and doing that. Okay.
Thank you so much. Janet's talk covered the Timbara site. Okay. We might chat to you afterwards about some. Okay. All right. We'll chat to you afterwards. And yeah, you're right. You're right. Water testing.
They're out and about.
Oh, they definitely are. They're all across. Yeah, I'm going to hand over to Scott. Are you able to just mention the sediment surveys?
Yeah, a couple of quick ones, particularly in relation to monitoring. So there's a Clarence Guardians project, some of you might have heard about it, sort of a community citizen science initiative in collaboration with Southern Cross University. And the aim, there's two major projects with it. One is to set up a long-term quality monitoring program, where samples are collected by citizens in the valley, and the analysis of those samples is conducted at Southern Cross University, And we're aiming for doing something like in the order of 10 years. We don't have that at the moment. We have nothing like it. We can't even answer a simple question like, is the water quality in our river getting better, worse, or is it stable over time? And so this would be a fantastic thing to do. If we sit around waiting for government and industry to do it, it's not going to happen. It needs to be led by the community. So that's something that's in train. But a more shorter term thing, which relates specifically to mining, is the first project, which is a baseline sediment survey of river sediment geochemistry. Basically, we want to get the entire community involved in a weekend in October this year, spreading out to about 100 different locations all around the valley, collecting samples. We'll analyse them at Southern Cross. This will give us a baseline of what's in the river sediments now, so that we've got a framework to assess any changes that might occur in the future. So it's a way of basically watching, and so we know what's there now, so we can keep future activities accountable. And everybody's welcome. Stuff online, you can join in, register, come along, it'll be dead easy. But yeah, is that what you're referring to, Shay? Yep.
100%, yes. And we've got, it's a bit weird holding two microphones, isn't it? We've got some brochures over there on the table for you to take if you'd like to register for that, because it's just so important. We've all registered, of course. We're going to get into it, and it'll just be a fun day too. Citizen science. There's so many different ways to get involved in. Stand up, I'm behind the box here. There's so many ways to get involved in helping with this issue, and it takes so much, and that is just the most amazing project, and just top humans, really, really good people involved in the River Guardians. Okay, is there another question? Oh, Steve. Okay, Steve. We can't talk about your case, remember?
This one's for Belinda. We talk a lot about community consultation as a first step when the miners come in. Can you define community in that sense as it's viewed under the Mining Act?
Yeah, we had a little bit of a look at this, Steve, and I can't find a definition of community in the legislation or in the Code of Practice. So it's a tricky one. It would have to just take its ordinary meaning. If there's no definition under the relevant legal framework, then we're looking at the ordinary meaning of community.
Can I just say something? On my property, they've put forward a Ford's Works plan, and under community consultation, they said that because there's no one that lives there, there's no need to consult. I've got heaps more.
Steve, we might just take the mics off Steve for a minute. Has anyone got another question?
A few years ago, we had problems with coal seam gas, and so we used lock the gate signs. So are they still relevant?
We had a meeting. Is that all right if I answer this? We had a meeting with Lock the Gate a couple of months ago, and from what we gathered, Lock the Gate is coal seam gas and coal, and doesn't quite cover minerals. Minerals is a new thing. It's the same with the federal water trigger. The federal water trigger is a piece of legislation that stops drinking water catchments being mined for coal and for gas, but it doesn't cover minerals. And because this is a new push to transition to renewables, minerals don't seem to be covered. However, that piece of legislation that's on the bottom of that sign is what keeps them out. So we do have, or we did have, I think we need to, Elizabeth, I think we need to get these going again. We have signs, we've got CCA signs. Do we have any up there, Elizabeth? No? Okay, we've run out. So we've got Clarence Catchment Alliance signs. They're bright orange, and it says protect our water and no mines Clarence Catchment. And they didn't have that piece of legislation on them early because we had them quite a while ago. We didn't put them on. But I think it's time that we get those going again and put that legislation on there and 100% put them on your gates. I think we had something like 500 of them made and they've gone. But yeah, we definitely need to do it again. But look, I don't think it would hurt putting a lock the gate sign on your fence because of that legislation. But Janet knows more on that.
Yeah, if you've still got one of those old lock the gate signs that actually talked about I do not give you permission to enter and therefore you are trespassing, that still applies. So it's, yeah, definitely useful.
Thank you. Any other questions? Get a running
So basically, from what I can understand, we have no current over.
You have to, because it's been streamed, you need to be able to listen to other people.
That you have no current procedures in place of taking water samples from some of the upper estuaries leading into the Clarence?
Yeah, so at the moment, there's very, very limited long-term water quality monitoring taking place in the Clarence, and that's pretty consistent with a lot of our northern New South Wales river systems. The Clarence Valley Council does some limited monitoring for certain purposes, but nobody's really doing it. The last major monitoring of water quality in the Clarence, at scale, was back in 2014. It was a 12-month study that was done by UNE. It's called the Eco Health Report. The whole catchment got given a report card for all of the different major tributaries within the valley. Since that time, and that was about a 12-month study, we haven't had anything systematic at all. Huge gap. And that's why we're trying to put this project in place to directly address this. And the only way it's going to happen is if the community is driving it, because the government's not funding it.
Well, I think it's already getting addressed, because I know in my area I have actually witnessed and seen people going out taking samples of the water, basically before floods and after floods.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a systematic review of some of the flood area, and it lasted for 2 years, 3 years after the last flood. So that's finished.
Yep.
It was just a short-term program. There was also there has been the start of a water quality measuring system using citizen sciences in the estuary areas at the moment. So they're looking at the Coaldale and some of the creeks flowing into the river around Maclean and upstream to Tyringham, I suppose it is. Not Tyringham. Brushgrove. So that's happening at the moment, and they're just doing quite a simplified survey at the moment, and that's using dissolved oxygen and pH, I think, are the key two measures that they're doing. And that's all available online now, and they're actually uploading the results in live, and you can actually see how the things are changing. I think the notable thing from that is that the dissolved oxygen in some parts is really low. Effectively, that river system is almost dead. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would add to that. The Coldstream and Shark Creek in particular, pretty grim. They're suffering big issues with deoxygenation and acidic water. But this is to do with stuff that's happening on the lower floodplain, nothing to do with mining. But look, the community's on it, and there's so many opportunities here for gathering more, I guess, long-term, high-quality information that helps us keep tabs on what's happening and inform future management decisions. And at the moment, there's been a bit of a vacuum. Yeah, there really has been.
G'day, Luke Robinson. I'm the Green spokesperson for Page. No, it was stood in the last election and like the next one as well. My question is with regards to the EPPC Act, and with the current government having watered it down in the last term of government to satisfy their salmon industry mates. My understanding is it's going to have a lot of implications on the future of challenges by groups like this to approvals that have been given to various projects. I'm just wondering, in our case, is it now that we can only challenge with licences that are being proposed, that if once they get approved, we can't then retroactively challenge them as we used to be able to under that legislation? So my understanding is that once it's done and dusted, you can't go back retroactively now, and if the circumstances have changed, and challenge them.
Yes, there's no reconsiderations, but that's not what we're talking about. These exploration licences often don't get any federal environmental approval at all. They don't even need really planning approval because they don't need a development consent. They're exempt under state laws as well. So it's only if they go through to the federal government agrees that they're controlled actions and then assesses them and approves them, that you'd have any federal involvement at that level to begin with. So there's no guarantee the feds would get involved at all.
So that's the calling in you're referring to?
A call-in or a referral, yeah.
And that could only be done at this stage. I mean, if once something was approved and then you say saw a whole lot of antimony and arsenic turn up in the water, would that then lead to...
Oh, well, it would depend because things are approved subject to conditions generally, and if the conditions were being breached, there's nothing... the laws haven't changed with regards to being able to enforce federal law. So that would be more of an enforcement action, from my understanding, and not a reconsideration as to whether or not it was a controlled action to begin with.
We will definitely be following up at a federal level, and we'll be following up with the Environmental Defenders Office, and we will be asking for a call-in because we have that many federally listed endangered species. We believe they're not being considered, and we've got strategy that reaches far beyond state government, also looking into things like World Heritage listing of really significant areas of this region that probably should be heritage listed already. But yeah, we've got some little things up our sleeves that we'd love, while I'm on it, if anybody would like to get involved in that type of stuff, doing research, helping us collaborate and work within, the region with experts that just even some citizen research, watchdogs. If you want to do some research for us, we really would love some more volunteers if you want to get into the nitty-gritty and the back end of developing some really great evidence.
Hi, I'm wondering if applying for exploration licences ourselves would cover us.
Well, we tried that with
We got that question yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah, if you tried it, you go for it.
We tried that during the coal seam gas campaign, and we were told that we didn't have the standing to be able to apply. You had to have a track record, you had to have, a proper company set up, you had to have expertise and all the rest of it. But then the idea that the one on Stephen Ross's place could be issued without that sort of backup was actually shocking to me, because basically, obviously, either the rules are being applied flexibly when it comes to mates, but certainly members of the community were told that we wouldn't have a standing, we wouldn't have the expertise or the background to be able to do it.
And I guess the only other thing to note is that an application does need to be accompanied by a works program, and then you're bound by that works program. So that would also have to be relevant to exploration.
I just have one more question is the landholder. You were saying that when you were trying to approach an authority that would have something to, would be able to do something about the mining happening 10 metres from the river. And what was that authority, what was that body called?
It's called the Mining Resource Regulator.
Which is part of the Department of Primary Industry and Regional Development now.
My question is, if you have a conservation agreement over your property or part of your property, does that protect you from mining exploration? Or if you have proven endangered or threatened species of either plants or animals, does that also give you some protection?
No. Sadly, no. The conservation agreements, it doesn't make any sense at all, but mining can still take place over areas that are covered by conservation agreements, including stewardship agreements. And exploration licences can be granted over huge tracts of land, including places where they can't explore, like national parks, but they just can't exercise the rights inside of those areas because of other rules that apply. So they can be, the licence can apply to land where the rights can't be exercised, but it's not, that they can exercise mining rights or exploration rights inside an area covered by a conservation agreement. Sadly.
That's pretty devastating.
Yes, because what the government's supporting conservation on the one hand and then kind of authorising its destruction on the other, and it makes no sense to me, but that's the way the law's drafted at the moment.
Hi, my name's Penny. I'm a land conservation and ecosystem management teacher at TAFE. And I'm just curious about when you go to Sydney in August, will you be requesting that they take on the mineral mining to the trigger law that you were just mentioning? So at the moment it's just coal and gas, but will you be requesting they also add the minerals into this trigger?
Yeah, a great question. The water trigger is a federal law, federal legislation, and mining is a state level. Look, we're going to mention it, of course. It's in our evidence. We're building a big evidence bank at the moment and pulling together all of this fantastic information that all of our volunteers and all the experts across this region have that we've been working with for nearly 8 years, and we're calling all that in. We've got a massive share drive dump spot, and we're putting it all together to create like this really big document to leave with them. We don't know how much time we're going to get in front of the ministers, but we certainly will be mentioning that. I went to Canberra a couple of years ago. I was a media manager for a federal candidate in the 2023 elections, and I just so happened to end up at a dinner with the Teals and mentioned the water trigger and got a little bit of feedback on that. So, look, it wasn't a requested meeting. I just happened to be sitting there with Zali Stegel and, Sophie Scamps and all of those amazing people. But, rose that issue. I got some time to talk to them about our region, which was fantastic. They were really open to more discussions, and at that point, we have so many side projects and hustles and things that we want to do, and because we've just got really limited volunteers, we have to put things on the back burner, and that was one of them. But look, it's time. And as I said before, we would love if, after these meetings, if you want to come and have a chat and lend some of your expertise, or, look, if you can Google, we need you. If we can flick you a little task to go and find a piece of legislation or just create something to add to this, it would be fantastic. But yeah, that is a federal level. But we want to take on some of these other calls when we look at our endangered species as well.
Wonderful, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, and all the best with the trip.
Thank you. We're going to try and get some national media across it as well. So, yeah, that's the next step.
This is a bit of a ridiculous question, but why not? So protecting east-flowing rivers, is there, I know this isn't anything that you're going to do in the short term, but is there any possibility of maybe including that in something like the Water Management Act, or And would that, Elio, help protect from some of those mining leases within the catchment?
Mining needs a lease, but it also needs a development consent, which for mining is state significant development. And if the Water Management Act it doesn't apply as it does apply to those sorts of projects, but it has to be applied consistently with the development consent. So if a mining lease is granted and then a mine is approved under the planning law, then the Water Management Act approvals need to fall into line with that. That's just how those laws interact with each other. So just off the top of my head, and don't have any law in front of me or haven't done any research, but that's what I would think, that those laws interact in such a way that the planning consent overrides or takes precedence over any protections in the Water Management Act. Would you agree?
Thank you. We've got, is it 4 o'clock? It is. Okay, so I think our live is probably cut out. So we might just take a couple more if there's any more, and then we'll
This is just a
let you
really
go.
quick one. I've noticed that we've focused on antimony and arsenic, and obviously that's just 2 of the contaminant concerns that are related to this situation. What I just wondered is, this is probably for hydrogeologists, considering that there's deposits on the land or in the land, locked in the land, and that there's a water table active at all times, how are you able to compare the water samples that come from the locked up forms, and to what extent is there security that the antimony and arsenic that's in the deposits is locked up versus labile in any case?
Can I just add before we go to Scott, there also there's explorations right across this region for copper, cobalt, bauxite, antimony, silver, gold, tungsten. There's a lot, yeah. So we have touched on that because of the Maclay evidence, but there's so many more.
Yeah, just to clarify your question, are you asking about how you can tell whether what's in the groundwater is naturally occurring or whether it's okay? Short answer is it depends. Yeah, because geochemistry is incredibly complicated. But there are ways of telling whether something in the groundwater is natural and background and part of like just your regional sort of interaction between the groundwater and the surrounding sort of geology, if you like, versus something that's been mobilised as a consequence of mining activity or digging stuff up. And I guess one of the key sort of principles is that a lot of ore bodies, not all, but a lot of ore bodies, particularly those that have metals, they're often associated with sulfides, which are, if you like, they're a form of mineral that is subject to changing when it comes into contact with oxygen. So when you dig sulfide ores up and you crush them and increase their surface area, and they basically rust, essentially, same as rusting. They oxidize, and then the form that the various metals are in that sulfide change. So you could have zinc or lead or antimony or arsenic all bound up as sulfides. Once they oxidize, they go off and form a whole bunch of other different sorts of minerals that have varying solubility depending on the groundwater conditions, and hence it gets very, very complicated very, very quickly. But there are ways of telling, yeah, whether it's natural, yep, and just part of the background, or whether it's been, or whether it's a result of human activity. Yeah.
Okay, one last one. Oh, I just hear you, Lillian.
Yeah, hi there. A last resort, I suppose. Are there any international laws that we subscribe to that could impact this?
I mentioned the EPBC Act earlier. That law implements in Australia many international laws that Australia has signed on to. So World Heritage because we've signed on to the World Heritage Convention. It protects Ramsar wetlands because we've signed on to the Ramsar Convention, the wetlands of international significant wetlands. The Convention on Biological Diversity, so lots of international laws are implemented through that act. That's its intent. That's where the Commonwealth got its power to make that law, or one of its powers to make that law. Beyond that, yeah, there's the human rights conventions.
That's right, yeah.
We don't have a Human Rights Act in New South Wales. We do in Queensland, ACT and Victoria.
Seriously?
We don't have one at the national level. We have some limited rights under our constitution, but they're kind of implied and difficult to find. But you have human rights regardless of whether a law tells you that you do. So there's no point raising it. I mean, there is a point raising it, sorry. There's no point arguing that you don't, like you do. And so there are human rights committees at the international level. Yeah, and they're not irrelevant, basically.
And we do have the Human Rights Commission. And we do have a Human Rights Commissioner, and I think at the federal level, and where you can report things like this as well, that where you feel as if something is treating you badly, you probably are being treated badly, and someone will listen to you. Whether they can do something legally about it is another matter. So, yeah.
There's also the point that many of our endangered species, especially the fish that I'm familiar with, are listed under the IUCN, which is an international worldwide body. So we've listed things like eastern freshwater cod initially in New South Wales, and then it's in the federal BPB&C Act, and it's also listed with the international IUCN. So that can be used as a hammer again to help protect those specific species that are listed under the IUCN.
Better contact Kevin Hogan again, eh? Oh, sure. We need more volunteers if we're going international too.
You mentioned some of the things covered by the EPBC Act, but there's JAMBA, which is the Japan-Australia Migratory Birds Agreement. There's CAMBA, which is the China-Australia Migratory Birds Agreement. And there's ROCAMBA, which is Republic of Korea. And the Bonn Convention. So there's just a few others. But why they're so important is that these are migratory shorebird agreements. And, of course, the pollution as it comes down the river gets to the estuary, and that's where these migratory shorebirds from Alaska and Siberia and all those places are feeding. The Clarence is probably, well, it's up and it might be the second highest estuary. The Hunter's got a lot more, but I think it's just that there's more people counting the birds down there. But so the Clarence is extremely important for these migratory shorebirds. So that's why those other agreements are really important too.
Okay, so we need more volunteers to count birds. Look, this is something that we could take on as a way bigger issue here and fight it on different levels. The state at the moment, we've waited 8 years to get to Parliament. We've been invited by a cross-party support, and we think that's a bit of a well, look, I think we're pretty proud on getting cross-party support in this region. Even just to get the National Party to do a backflip, it's like, wow. That day, Richie Williamson and Dougal Saunders, who's the leader of the Nationals, live on radio, said that this is no place for mineral mining, and I just dropped everything. I was working in Grafton and just went straight to his office. That interview was live with Damo at the back. Thank you to Loving Life FM and Clarence Media as well for today. Thank you so much. They support us a lot. Just to get Dougal Saunders, head of the Nationals at a state level, to agree. He retracted because we had a petition debated in 2021, 10,000 people signed that petition here in the region, and it was debated in the lower house, and the Nationals spoke against our community. And at that time, the then head of, our then state rep, whose name will remain unspoken, anyway, the previous state MP for Clarence spoke against his community, and that was pretty heart-wrenching actually, to not have the support of your local rep, and we had to go to Janelle Saffin for her to put that petition forward for the community. And her and Tamara Smith from the Greens in Ballina spoke on behalf of our community petition, as well as Helen Dalton, who is from the Murray-Darling, and she spoke because she was saying that the Clarence is just the envy of their area because that region is just destroyed. And so, yeah, for Dougal Saunders, who was a speaker against our petition, to do a backflip is pretty big. So the evidence is clear. I think it's starting to seep through, leaching, if you like, into those people that actually need to make the decisions, and hence the reason why we talk to the government. And I just wanted to state again, we're not politically aligned at all. We'd talk to whoever was in government, whoever's elected, it's the same legislation, and we'll be banging on to whoever's there. So, yeah, that's our aim. So I'm wondering, do you want to... Sorry? Another question? Oh, I'm in the corner. Okay, sorry, I'm not in the camera. Okay. Might make me look younger. Oh yeah, because the thing's open. Sorry. Anyone want to take on that one? I don't know if we want to say. The fossil fuels are subsidised. What about minerals? Okay, Janet's going for it.
We do have discretion in terms of how much royalties that mining companies pay, and so in Western Australia, I think they were, when the federal government was talking about having a resource rent tax, the Western Australian government said, "Oh, we'll meet that by cutting the royalties that we charge the mining companies." So that certainly, as Shay mentioned, there's the critical mineral strategy, which is operating at both the New South Wales, there's a similar one at the federal level, and we, to attract miners, they will certainly reduce royalty payments. But separate to that is that any amount of diesel that they use in terms of their mining equipment, in terms of their drilling equipment, getting their drill rigs onto site, those sorts of things. They don't have to pay the excise on diesel because that's meant to be just for repairing roads. And, they're not using roads, it's all going to be off road. So they get that taken, they get that returned to them by the federal government.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Do I lose one of these now? One of these microphones? Am I? Are we still live? We are. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I hope everyone's got a cup of tea or a beer or a wine by now at home. Should I swap? Now I have 4. We're broadcasting to the stratosphere. Okay. Right. This one? I think we need to finish off anyway. Yeah, look, it's past 4, and it's been a long session, and we really thank you. We hope you can hang around and have a chat. If not, please jump onto our website and register for our newsletter. We update pretty much daily, if not every couple of days, on our Facebook group though. So our Facebook group is Clarence Catchment Alliance on Facebook. So have a look. We put everything up there. That's the up-to-date rundown. We've got a chat group in there. We're looking at putting together an off-that platform chat group so that we're a little bit more able to, say stuff that maybe we shouldn't on socials. And, yeah, keep up to date. So please register for the newsletter. please see Lizzie if you want to put in a statement or do a signature on a pledge. Leave your email. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody on our panel. Thanks to the EDO. Thanks to everybody that's come along. Thank you.